All right, and welcome to today's Storytelling Saturday. I'm Michael Gracia. I got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Excuse me. A lot. Today what I wanted to do is talk about the books that helped me learn about storytelling as well as other things that helped me learn. I'm starting my new segment today, which is what's it called? My new segment is on a comic review. I'll be reviewing comics as well as spotlighting some webcomics. Now, I put out in a lot of Facebook groups and on other social medias people to come and submit to me a PDF, even with a watermark. I'm not looking for free copies of books. I'm looking to read and promote indie creators mostly. That's what I do. When I do my Get in Tune interviews on Tuesday night, they are to promote artists and other creators working in the indie world. When I started this Storytelling Saturday, I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do with it. I wanted to when I created, I wanted to talk about story ideas that I didn't think I'd ever make. That's really what it was about. And then, I changed it because my love of storytelling just had to come through. And I have to talk about it. I love talking about storytelling. I love teaching it. It's one of my favorite topics to teach. And so I decided to start talking about. I started talking about comics. I'm what I call a visual storyteller. I mean, it's a term that's out there. Basically, I tell stories visually. I may write on paper sometimes, but at the end of the day, all the stories I create are meant to be in some kind of video or some kind of animation or comic or children's book. So it's all about, at the end of the day, visuals. And I have a bunch of stuff that I want to go over today. I want to talk about. I'm gonna spotlight the comics maybe a little later. I thought about doing it in the beginning, but maybe I'll do it closer to the end. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So the first thing, and let me just fix this here on my screen so I can move these over to another screen. And okay, sorry, just want to make sure I got everything set up correctly for today. So before I actually get into stuff, I wanted to talk about a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to post a link in the in the comments, and this is a link to an interview I did with Nerds of the Round this past Wednesday on the 10th. That was the 10th of February is my birthday, and Nerds Around asked me to be on, and I thought it was a great. I liked their interviews, so I figured I'd come on, and it was a nice way to celebrate my birthday. But also, if you really want to learn about me, it might be one of the most in-depth interviews I've done. It's only an hour. It's great, and I think you guys should check it out. Also, as a gift, my wife was kind enough to let me pick out my own birthday gifts this year. Which she always gets me great stuff, but she was like, just buy what you want. So I just wanted to show off a couple of things that I purchased off Amazon. Now, you guys know me. I'm a comic strip guy. So the first one I want to show is the collection of Belvedere cartoons. It's called Full of Mischief by George Crenshaw. Okay. And if you're not familiar with Belvedere, it's a great old strip it's about a dog named Belvedere. Single panel stuff, you know, really nice stuff. And again, this book isn't about storytelling, which they, but this is just a gift I bought myself. I thought that was great. I'm also a big fan of the comic strip Mother Goose and Grimm, so I bought this for myself, which is a collection. Surprisingly, how much of a fan I am, I've never owned a collection of the works, so great stuff. And then the last one I picked up was Hey Harley by Dan Thompson. Dan Thompson is one of my, or he might be actually my favorite, current creator today. He's got Rip Haywire, he's got Harley. It's just a great book here. It's all usually like 3-4 panel gags, like traditional stuff. But it's a really good book. I haven't read it yet, but I've read his strips. I've probably read every single one in here, maybe missed a couple. Anyway, let's get on to what today's about. Let's talk about storytelling. And you know what? I think I've decided I'm going to do my reviews right now, in the beginning of the shows. I think that might be a good way to start off. So the first comic I want to talk about, and this person, and the reason I'm showing it today is because he was the first one to reply to me. And I gotta say, let me just open it up here, and I'm going to share the screen. So this right here is the comic. It's called Roundhouse Hooligans. And the first thing I want to say is I'm a fan of the art. I really enjoy the artwork in this. I don't want to go into too much detail and give a lot away, but I think the artwork was done very well. Definitely kind of has, something that you might see in like Image Comics or something. The coloring is great. I love, the intertwining of the chain linked fence here. I hate drawing stuff like that. I think they did a great job on it. I think the house is done real well. So basically, to give you the gist of the story, and this comic, I believe, is free to download if you go to their site, and I'll try to find that link. I forgot to get the link, and I think I have it in my email, so I'll check the email. Anyway, it starts off with this family having Thanksgiving dinner, and this obviously gang coming. Where's my mouse? This gang coming for them. All right, or driving, and it turns out, from what I gather, is that the father used to be part of the gang. I don't know 100%. Okay, and it gets into obviously a very interesting battle. But basically, the parents are killed, and it's now about the kids, and the kids are older now, and they've been separated, and they're trying to find each other. And I'm not going to go further for a few reasons. One, this is honestly my review of the book. I think the story is very good. I think the writing is done well. I think it some of the dialogue, I don't know how, if it's like super realistic, but I don't care about that in my comics. The dialogue's good. It doesn't bother me that I feel like it's off and people wouldn't say it. My issue with this comic, and it's not an issue that is bad. I would honestly watch this if it was a TV series or movie. I think it's a fantastic story for that. What it is as a comic for me, and I know I have friends who like this type of stuff, so I'm not knocking them. Everybody can read whatever they want to, but for me, it's a little too violent. You know, there is, you know, a lot of, you know, language, which again, that doesn't usually bother me too much. And there's a lot of sexual situation with nudity in there. Now, again, I'm not a prude. I don't care about that stuff. Draw whatever you want, watch whatever you want. Enjoy it. As long as it's not hurting anyone, it's good. And there's people out there who like comics like that. But for me, the comics I like have a bit more escapism for me. The problem for me with this comic is I can see this as too much of a reality. And when I read a comic, I don't want to read about reality. I'll watch it as a movie or a TV series. I like that type of stuff in that medium. But in a comic form, this book, this book is not something I would pick up. However, with that said, I have a lot of friends that would. And I know a lot of people would like that. It's really well written. The art is fantastic. It's just not the type of book I would pick up personally. I think you guys should look up. Let me see if I can pull up the link for it in my email, because I do think if you are into more realistic stories where it takes place in present or even little further future time, where not much has changed there, you know, you enjoy the violence, you enjoy seeing the imagery of people getting hurt, you know, with swords, knives, guns, whatever it is. And if you don't mind viewing people, you know, with the whole hold on, I'm just looking this up, with sexual situation, but actually seeing the nudity, then it's a fine book. Again, for me, it's not a book in that I would pick up, but it is a great book. I can't find the link. Maybe it's in my Facebook messages the guy sent me. I'll check that out. I'm sorry. I thought I had the link copied with all the other links I wanted to share today. It is you know, I had a lot of fun. Like I said, I had a lot of fun reading it. What I didn't have, hold on, I'm just looking up the guy here. Whoops, where'd it go? I think, is this it here? Nope, that's not the book. Let's show all. Had a lot of responses. I think this was the guy. Yep. Okay, you know what? Now I'm gonna have to find out how to get it for you, because I'm looking at it and he sent me a link to the Dropbox to download it. I can't just share that, especially since you don't have the invitation on there. But if this is something, like I said, if you like that type of story, it's a book totally for you. It's not a bad book. It's just not what I want in my comics. That's all. But again, TV show, movie, I'm all on top of this. It looks like it would be fun. So let me unshare my screen real quick. Wrong monitor. And so yeah, that was the first comic that I got to read and review. A lot of fun, like I said, just not my style of comic to buy. I have a bunch. Let me tell you, when I sent this out, I got a lot of people like, wow, they were interested in sending me their work for me to review. And I was very excited that I got a lot of great feedback on there. I have a bunch to read, and last week I had a week in between from when I started posting to when I'm doing it now. Between my day job, freelance, and a few other things, I didn't get to read much. So, and same thing with the webcomics. I want to really push a lot of these indie creators, but I want to do it well, where I'm not, half-assing reading their stories and kind of giving just kind of like, oh, this is good or whatever. I want to really get in there and read it. Next week, or this coming week, I'm off from my day job. I have vacation. And even though I'll be working on freelance and some personal projects and whatnot, I plan to set aside my lunch hour that I give myself, and maybe a full day just to read everything, so I can start giving you guys better feedback and better books to look at. In the meantime, I want to spotlight two webcomics. But before I do, I want to share a link with you in the comments. So the first one is for an interview I did with Renee Fitzner, who is the creator of Mythic Creature Trainer. All right, Mythic Creature Trainer, and let me share this with you. There we go. So Mythic Creature Trainer is a webcomic by Renee Fitzner. He ran a successful Kickstarter back in May or June of 2020, and I donated, and I got the digital copies at the time. When all this started, it was during the time of COVID, and just kind of being out there, and I was nervous to get actual books in the mail, right? But I'm just making sure everything is good here, loading up properly. So I just got the digital platform, which was fine. I enjoyed it. I got to read the first issue and all the extra bonuses that I got. I had literally a bunch of comics from him. All right, and I've read them all. They're fantastic. I love his simplicity and style. Renee is a he used to be a Disney animator, like back on the Australian lot that did a lot of like the direct to video stuff back in, I guess, the late 90s, early 2000s. He's done storyboards for other shows like Bob's Burger. He does a lot of things. He has he has his own YouTube channel if you want to look him up, and does animation, like religious animation. And basically this is a very fun story. All right. It's about this guy who right now, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name. He has a knack for training mythological creatures. Right. And he's very kind. Everybody really likes him. And you could see the kind of story. That's his roommate right there. You can see people being nice to him, and then when he gets down, he gets to work. And this is in the first issue. And what happens is, if you purchase the comic book version of it through his Kickstarter, there are extra pages that aren't online in there. So, he says goodbye and he heads over. And then he has this little goblin character as his boss, who isn't really the nicest guy to him. Anyway, that's, just so you can see the simplicity, but it's just if you like all-age fantasy. Now, this is more something I would pick up in a store or be known to read. I love fantasy. I mean, you guys can tell, obviously, I got Lord of the Rings behind me. I got my Dungeons and Dragons books behind me. I'm a big fantasy fan. I have always loved stories with dragons and, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't have to be dragons, but fantasy stuff like Conan. My all-time favorite artist I've mentioned is Sergio Aragones, who does Gru, and who's a parody on Conan. But anyway, I like this. And if you look at his Kickstarter, all you gotta do is click on here, and you could check it out. He's almost reached his. It's only been out since Wednesday in America here, Tuesday technically in Australia, and he's about $1,000 away from his goal, and he's got 26 days left. And you can take a look. And I interviewed him, so you can go check out the interview. It's a great interview. You can download the preview. When you go to his website, if we go back to his website, it will have a link to download a free copy. And I don't know if the preview is the same as the copy. Anyway, if we go down just to the tiers, and I got to give him my link so he could be, my logo, so he can be shown on here. And that's him. It's just easier to show the levels if we go down, and here's some pages. So let's go to the rewards. So if you were like me, nervous about getting mail because of the pandemic, for about $9 American, $12 Australian, you can get issues 1 and 2 in PDF, right? The pledge I made was this one here, original character sketch. So I get 2 copies of issue 2, including a limited variant cover, issue 1, an original signed sketch. That's the reason I did it, is I figured if I'm going to spend the money, and I'm really a big fan of his art, I might as well get a sketch out of this, right? Signed limited edition print, name in the book, all the PDFs, and free shipping in Australia, which I'm not into, so I had to pay for shipping. But it was about $46 American, which isn't too bad, plus the shipping I had to pay for. So it really was pretty good. Anyway, the other one that I want to talk about, and I have the link page next to it, but I want to put the link in the comments. Okay. This is an interview I did with Steve Conley, who does... Let me just make sure I'm on. Who does the middle-aged comic. Now, this comic, one of my favorite webcomics I've read. I do want to buy some of the collections that he's put out. Because of how beautiful his artwork is, I think it I would like to read it on the page rather than on the computer. But if we go to the very first episode, you can see how his work, just coloring things kind of change throughout the strip. The detail on the sword gets a little less, but things happen. So basically, this guy here, Sir Gwymp of Grolix, pulls out this magic sword, which stabs him, and it's a talking sword, and the sword's a bit of a jerk, at least to him. So it's in him, he's not dead, and you can see here, he says the dragon's not dead, and I'm going to only show a few things. He's running, he's having a conversation with the sword. One of the things that really drew me to this comic was the artwork specifically. Usually, I've always said it's always story, then art, but what's it called? It was always story, then art, but where is it here? But this is one of the things that art really just grabbed me, and I'm like, I gotta look at this. And I just want to get to a certain panel. So, obviously, the dinosaur skeleton wants the sword back. And it won't come out of the guy. Anyway, I don't want to go through it and spoil it for you, but if you go to the website, and I'm going to post the link to everything in the comments. I'm actually going to try to, you might see it double posted, the interview I did with Steve Conley, because I'm having an issue posting it to Facebook and it asked me to try again. Up, and it goes this time. So just to give you some links, here is, whoops, there's Mythic Creature Trainer. You can get a link to the Kickstarter in there, but I'm going to put it right here too, and then to the middle-aged comic, which I think everybody should be reading. So those are the two webcomics I feel should be spotlighted today. The Roundhouse Hooligans is another comic I think is fantastic, like I said, but as for me as a film. And I'll get you guys a link to where people can find it. I believe they give this comic away for free, so you can read it. Now, getting on to what today is really about. The books that helped me learn storytelling, the books I recommend to people. Before there's one book I want to show first before all others. And I'm sorry, they're on the floor because I have a large pile of books I want to show. I'm trying to pick some up. Now, for me, I want to talk about this book first. Ideas for the Animated Short. It's by Focal Press, I believe, and this is a copy of the second edition. It's got a bunch of different contributors, and it talks about a few things. Mostly, I would say, preparing you to storyboard and stuff. This was a textbook for the visual storytelling class I taught at the college when I was full-time at a college. I think, I don't know what version they're at. I believe it's still in print. But I think this was a good book for anyone just starting out, but is at like, I don't know, maybe late high school, early college. This is a good book. And I just want to recommend it. I don't remember if I chose this book for the class or if the book changed. I think we changed it because my all-time favorite storytelling book that I read for a long time was this one. It was called Visual Storytelling. This, I believe, is out of print, but you might be able to find it on things like eBay and Etsy and stuff. You know, it's got where is it here? It's by Tony Caputo. It's got introduction by Harlan Ellis and a special essay by Jim Steranko. So even though there's a lot of comic stuff in here, which is important, you can go into other aspects of it. And I think if I was to choose one of my favorite sections, well, definitely the Steranko piece. Here's Jim Steranko, Harnessing Mythology, Reflections on Narrative Theory. That's like a section in there, and it's the last few pages in here, and then I think it's him or someone else breaks down a comic page, right? It's been a while since I've read this. I go through it every now and then to pull stuff out, but you know, this book probably gave me some of the best tips specifically on comics. So the visual storytelling design palette, it's a great chapter. It talks about using reference and the difference in realism and you know, all this stuff using well, that's from a different chapter I'm looking. Sorry, I just scrolled away from flipped away from it. But these are great books. You know, this one, if anyone wants to do comic storytelling or just any type of visual storytelling, but comics in general, this is the book to get. It might be out of print, so look for it on eBay and stuff. But this right here, I think was one of the best books I've ever read. and it's a book I'll never get rid of. Let me just pull it up. Another book that I enjoyed. I felt it was sometime in some, and maybe because of my knowledge already, but in some places a little generic. But very interesting topics to read. Was the DC Comics Guide to Creating Comics, Inside the Art, of Visual Storytelling. Now, who's it by? Carl Potts, forwarded by Jim Lee. Now, one of the things I've always liked about this book is in the beginning, they talk about, I want to get to chapter 1 here. That's the introduction. Chapter 1 is called The Art and Heart of Comics. Now, when I go through this here, they explain chapter 1, comics and sequential visual storytelling. So they go through this, they explain how panels are supposed to be read and used. Chapter 2, your brain on comics. So how the reader, visual comics, goals and principles of sequential visual storytelling. So they talk to you about a bunch of different things. And as it goes on, you'll affecting the reader's experience. In another, this one, chapter 5 is all about panels, how it works. Chapter 6, the big picture. So changing pages containing series of juxtaposed panels requires a strong sense of design to keep audience immersed in the narrative. So, you're going to go through a lot of really, really cool stuff. And I think I was rereading the book a while back, and I have a bookmark on there. But, part 3 is on narrative art, and talks about, lots of things from cropping figures to adding spot blacks, and they give you exercises to do in here to help you learn. Then part 4 is putting it all together, so understanding how to put the page together, and then that's basically it. But I mean, I wish I can sit down and show you more of this. It is a great book, and this is another one for anyone who wants to learn comics. And it doesn't matter, honestly, if you're making superhero comics or not. It doesn't matter that DC focuses on superheroes. What's important is that this really goes over and helps you think about how comics are looked at, and how you and how to go about the process. That's the important thing. Speaking of DC, let's just move on to Marvel real quick. Marvel Comics, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. I think everyone has owned this book at some point. It's really more of a drawing book, but they do have some storytelling pieces in here. And one of the things you'll learn, and what I like about it, one of the pages, and I just even open to it, is understanding composition and how to use shapes to create composition. One of the reasons I like looking at this is because I'm just a huge fan of John Buscema, and he worked on the book. The other thing, they talk about drawing, what's it called? Drawing a standard picture versus drawing dynamic, and what's going to look dynamic, So if we look here, and just to give you an example, in this page here, we got this monster busting through a wall, and here are some of the Avengers looking at it, and they're okay. It's okay, and this is kind of maybe how somebody who never really worked too much with comics before, or storytelling and understanding camera angles, can help enhance the story. So what I learned from this book, outside of how to draw superheroes, was how to create dynamic poses and dynamic scenes. So now all of a sudden, the new picture is he's on an angle, and now there's this over-the-shoulder shot of Iron Man here, right? So the things are becoming more and more dynamic. Sorry, I'm just looking. And now here they are, much more of an action pose. And this picture, number 4, obviously Iron Man has a lot more power behind that punch, you know? And instead of just being straight up, Iron Man's now at an angle. We're seeing a lot different. And Cap and Vision there really looked, shocked and like they're ready to get into battle, So this book is always available. I know they've made it. I've heard they've sold it at things like the Dollar Tree recently for like $5 maybe. I mean, seriously, if you have one, it's there. Go for it. If you find a used copy, take it out of your library. Excuse me. 2 other good books. Comics and Sequential Art by Will Eisner and Graphic Storytelling by Will Eisner. I don't need to even review these books. Just by saying the name Will Eisner, you should be like, I want to read this book. All right? Will Eisner, for those who don't know, to me, might be one of the greatest storytellers of all time in the sense of how he composed pictures, how he used his inks to create contrast between dark and light. I think, I remember being a kid and looking at his work and not being too much into the artwork. I remember not liking his work until I was a teenager, like late teens, but always enjoyed his inks. I was like, wow, this guy must have changed the way the world was in the comic world with the way he inked. And then when I got older and I started really understanding camera angles and storytelling and other things like that, I'm like, geez, this guy really knew what he was doing. And he wrote these 2 books. Now, the first one, Graphic Storytelling, and what I like about these books, too, by the way, is that he uses artwork from his own stories and has created artwork specifically for these books here, and he really breaks down, the story of storytelling, and there is, don't get me wrong, there is writing in the book, but when you look at it, it's a lot more imagery to look at and to understand, and you're going through this and you're just really understanding what he did by what he talks about. Like even here, by 1957, Kniff's, and he was talking about Steve Kniff's storytelling with his strip Steve Canyon. Now, Steve Canyon, for those who don't know, was a newspaper strip. It was created by Milt Kniff, and it was inked by Dick Rockwell. Now, he was one of my teachers, Rockwell, and I worked with him, and he taught me a bunch of stuff that I thought is fantastic. Some of it, like I've said in other interviews, was kind of common knowledge, but I didn't think of it. Like I knew it, but until he said it to me, I was like, oh, that really makes sense. And then I started noticing, and I guess, it was just the way his storytelling was great. And when Kniff passed away, I believe it was in the 80s, Rockwell finished the storyline for the year, and then Steve Canyon retired. So when I've talked about this in other whether it was my Get in Tune, I might have talked about this in the Storytelling Saturdays. But when I look at artists that I love, I'm not looking at a lot of mainstream modern day artists. I look at the classics. I look at Alex Raymond, Hal Foster, Milt Kniff, all right, Will Eisner, Carmine Infantino. These are people who when I look at their work, I can see where people today were inspired by it, and looking at that is a little bit more inspirational to me than seeing what people are doing. I mean, it's cool to watch. Don't get me wrong. It's great to see new artists and how they've been inspired by the old timers and stuff. But for me, I like to look at the older guys. It's just a little bit more fun. Things were a little different, and characters were new. or they put a spin on it. Like my all-time favorite Superman artist is Curt Swann. I think Curt Swann might have drawn the definitive Superman, and I would love Superman to constantly look like how Curt Swann drew him. Um, and there's a reason for that. It was just great. It was the storytelling that Curt did, the way he looked, the way the characters looked. It was kind of this. It kind of had this because he did a lot during like the Silver Age of comics. And it was kind of what led us into the modern age of Superman. So, like, Superman looked like Curt Swann for his style for decades before it became the Jose Garcia Lopez style, which do I have somewhere? I kind of have up on my wall. It's kind of blurred out, but right above my Lord of the Rings poster is a Jose Garcia Lopez print from the 80s, his DC character guide, style guide for DC. And that's, the 80s look was really Lopez's design. But Curt Swann, to me, was the look that came before it, and that's how I always think of Superman. The other book, Comics and Sequential Art. It's I don't remember which came first. Let me see if I can find a copyright date real quick. First printing of this was 1985. Graphic Storytelling's first print. 1996. So this is more of a spin-off than what was going on in here. This is just, it's good, but it's a good enhancement to what you get in here. I just always forget which came first. But here, just from the table of contents I'm reading to you. This is from Comics and Sequential Art. Okay. Chapter 1, Comics as a Form of Reading. Chapter 2, Imagery. Chapter 3, Timing. Chapter 4, The Frame. Chapter 5, Expressive Anatomy. Chapter 6, Writing and Sequential Art. Chapter 7, Application of Sequential Art. What am I on? Chapter 8, Teaching/Learning, and then you end with the index. But again, it's very similar to the way it was set up with a lot of his own work. And he created some stuff for here, but there's also obviously, text that he wrote to help with descriptions and, to explain what's going on, like the application of writing, words, art, inseparable. So here, the following is an example of the interdependency of words and image. Undertakes a theme of some sophistication. In this case, the art without the text would be quite meaningless. Here the artist is also writing. And I've always said, and I don't know if I was told this, and I just kind of like, whoever told it to me, I just kind of took it and been saying this. But I've said for years, I write with pictures. That's what I do. So I'm going to just read this little comic. Then I'm going to hold it up to the camera. So it's two fish in a fishbowl, and it says, I do believe in God, or I don't believe in God or any supreme being, intelligence, or divine providence. That's panel 1. Panel 2, it's just blank, and they're just kind of swimming in the bowl. And then the other fish in the third panel says, oh yeah, then who feeds us every day? So, where is it here? Oops, wrong way. So right there, without the words, this comic would just be two fish in a bowl, and you'd have no clue what's going on. So you need the words to help. Now, like I said, Sergio Aragones is my all-time favorite comic artist. He drew for Mad Magazine since the 60s, and you look at his stuff, and he was famous for his pantomime strips. You did not need words in his comics at all, but it worked. But there are comics that need text. Without it, you can't get your story across. You can't get your joke. You can't get whatever. You need them. Another good book, I recommend. Making Comics by Scott Mccloud. You can also pick up Understanding Comics and Reinventing Comics. I don't know if they're still in print. What's nice about this is it's done in comic strip form or comic book form. Everything here is a comic book. I read Understanding Comics first, and I think I got rid of the book or I lost it when I moved or something. I don't remember. But I had Reinventing and I had Understanding. Now, Understanding was his first book. And there's a great chapter in there on using symbols in art. And that textbook wasn't even a textbook. It was a textbook in college, but it wasn't a textbook for drawing or making comics or whatever. It was for my video editing class. When I learned Adobe Premiere in college, that was my textbook because it really taught you about how to use shape language. And when I mean shape, I'm not talking about like character design, that we use in shape language where squares mean like tough and circles are soft and cute and triangles are evil and stuff. I'm talking about like how we can use imagery throughout the page and shapes throughout the page to really help lay out the story and tell what it is. So if you can find those books, definitely check them out. Scott Mccloud really is just super knowledgeable. And because it reads as a comic, it's fun to read, easy to do, easy to learn. I will say, if you can, pick up, if you can find anything of it, pick up Zot. Zot was Scott McCloud's comic. Fantastic book. I loved it as a kid. Another book, this is actually on Writing Comics. This is by Nick McCary, probably one of the great talents. Really talks to you about understanding how scripts should be written, understanding how dialogue should be used, when to like, if you want to use the word pause or slow down the storytelling, when to, right here, I just flipped to a page, how to use tension and suspense. Okay. So this book really isn't that expensive. If it's still the same price when I bought it, it's $17.99. Check it out on Amazon. It's called The Working Writer's Guide to Comics and Graphic Novels. Probably one of the best books I've ever written on script writing, for comics specifically. Okay. I'm going to go through three more actual books that I learned from. Now, when I was a kid, I mentioned Bruce Blitz is one of my favorite, I guess, cartooning teachers, if you will, because I've always had his books and things. This was a book that I had, The Big Book of Cartooning by Bruce Blitz. Got it even signed by him. But there's a section here on making comics and on making comic strips. And this right here was my first introduction to how to write gags and stuff and how to put a comic together. Now, this book, I think, came out in 1989 or so. Let me see. I couldn't find the copyright date. Oh, 1998 the book came out, but this is a collection of all his stuff from other books. So like if you want to learn how to make like a caricature, it's in here. How to draw like superheroes and make, I think there's a superhero comic page in here. Like, yeah, talking about camera angles. So this is from other stuff of his. I knew that before. I bought this book, in 98, I was 22 years old. I bought this book because I'm such a Bruce Blitz fan. By then I've already used all the stuff and I was working professionally. And the same thing as Bruce, Drawing from the Funny Side of on the Funny Side of the Brain by Chris Hart. If you really love humor stuff, this is a good book to give you an idea of how humor comics work. He talks about a lot of different things. I interviewed Chris Hart. I interviewed Bruce Blitz. You can find them on my YouTube page under the Get in Tune Live playlist. Yeah, two really great guys, great interviews, great, teachers and have such a love and passion for cartooning. It's really cool. Then the other book that I have, and I don't know if this is my signed copy. Yes, it is. Okay, Matt Madden. This is one of my favorite books. 99 Ways to Tell a Story, Exercises in Style. So basically, he starts off with a simple, let me get to it here. So he goes through the beginning and he talks, here's the template. This is your story, right? And then if we go through the book, it's the same story throughout, just told differently. So I'm just going to flip through it. Here's a furry version. I think there was a manga version before it. Police procedural. So he talks about different ways. So it gives you lots of different thoughts, even though it's the same exact story. You know, this is, just looking here if there's another cool one. You know, same story here, a life. He did it in a guy's timeline. You know, this is just a great way to look at different ways to tell the same exact story. And it really makes you think. I met him at a show. I had this, I bought, and I recommended it. Actually, I used this book, I believe, in my storytelling class. I don't remember if I had a copy for all the students, or if I would just copy a couple of pages out here and there just to show them the difference. But he was nice enough. I met him at New York Comic Con, 2007. And I told him how I was using this book in my classroom, and he gave me a free autographed copy because he's like, you already paid for it. Here you go. Really great, great book. Morning, Mike. Thanks for tuning in. I got a few other things I want to talk about, though. Those are all the actual educational books that I've read that are here are the books, and I'm going to show them one more time. So I know you guys can go back and watch this video, but if you want, just to show you one more time, 99 Ways to Tell a Story, Exercise in Style by Matt Madden, fantastic. Drawing on the Funny Side of the Brain by Chris Hart. The Big Book of Cartooning by Bruce Blitz. Now again, this is kind of is a little more basic and great for kids. Same thing with this, but this book, great for kids, even teens. It'll really get you started in the world. The other books I'm showing you and talking about, you really need to be a little bit more mature of a thinker and reader for them. For example, The Working Writer's Guide to Comics and Graphic Novels. Making Comics by Scott Mccloud. Comics and Sequential Art by Will Eisner. Graphic Storytelling by Will Eisner. How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way by Stan Lee and John Buscema. This book here, also pretty good for kids, but I wouldn't give it to them until they're like 5th grade. DC's Guide to Creating Comics by Chris Potts. Really good. This book, like I said, I believe is out of print, but Visual Storytelling by Tony Caputo. If you can find this might be my all-time favorite storytelling book right here, besides the Will Eisner stuff. And finally, Ideas for the Animated Short. It's just a great way to start getting you thinking of storytelling. This is mostly for animation over comics, but again, or even film could be thought about through here. But it talks about a lot of different things, and they're just all great books. Anyway, that were those books. I want to talk about a few other books before we get going here. And these are more comics, like actual comics that I've read that have inspired me, that I stopped to study the storytelling. And I think the first one I'm going to talk about is this: Calvin and Hobbes. Okay, it doesn't matter which Calvin and Hobbes book you pick. Calvin and Hobbes, excuse me, I'm sure everyone knows who Calvin and Hobbes is. This book or these comics just keep being seen by every new generation, because at some point the generation before them owns it. Now, Bill Watterson, who created Calvin and Hobbes, told these really great stories, these really great jokes. They were very thought-provoking too, some very philosophical things. But his, like, even this, I mean, you look at this Sunday right here, right? Just that type of storytelling. It was, you would see him do these really great things on Sundays. And when you look at these Sunday strips, you're just like, wow. And when he's getting into these what's it called? Spaceman Spiff stuff here. Like, it's getting very creative. You'd be surprised to see something that nice in a Sunday comic strip. You're looking, that's something more like new, comic books. Another two I want to talk about. I'm going to show this one here. Now, this isn't based on what it is here, in the sense where I'm looking at the DC archive. But as a kid, I used to be a big Teen Titans fan, and I used to love the Marv Wolfman, George Perez New Teen Titans. And so reading this stuff really taught me about how they tell stories. And I just lost a bookmark somewhere. I don't know if I was reading it somewhere. Hey, it's a Doctor Who bookmark. Cool. Anyway. The next one, he's passed away by now, but one of my favorite, who would be considered a modern comic artist, Darwin Cook. I don't know for most people if it gets better than Darwin. I mean, here's a guy who comes from the less is more theory, like Alex Toth, who just creates this beautiful looking art. I mean, the colors, everything that, I mean, I don't know if he colored this. I don't remember, but I know he penciled and inked it. I think he had a colorist, right? I'd have to go back and look that up. But just being able to see the simplicity of his use of panels, right? The types of shots he used and everything to tell this story, it's unbelievable. This is probably one of my all-time favorite comics. All right. And the last two I'm going to talk about is Will Eisner. All right. The first one is The Spirit. The Spirit, created by Will Eisner himself, right? These are the stories from June 2nd to December 29th, 1940. All right. So we can just look. And this is a little old-time storytelling, but like I said, looking at The Spirit, the way he shadowed things, that was really the stuff. But he was very creative in a lot of ways. I'm trying to find the page that gives a good example of it. Even the paneling that he was doing back then. How many people broke up panels like that back then? He just knew how to tell a story. And the other last one is probably, to me, the greatest Will Eisner book of all times. Contract with God. This is a must-read by any comic fan, any Will Eisner fan. This book, the way, it's all done with his, with grays and toning and his pen and stuff. Just beautiful stories here, right? This book, just to give a quick summary what it's about. The first story starts off, and I'm not going to give anything away, really. The first story starts off, I believe they're in Israel, and there's this village, and they have the money to send the rabbi and one person to America. And we're going back like early 1900s type of thing. And this one kid prays to God and says if he's picked to go to America, he will devote his life to God. He gets picked. He devotes his life to God. He has an adoptive daughter who ends up, I won't say exactly what happened, but ends up getting hurt. And he felt the contract he made with God when he prayed was broken by God, so he turns away from God. And he buys this building. And basically the story revolves around everything that happens at the building. It's growing up in the 30s, 40s, 50s, things like that throughout. And I'm not going to say anything else about the story. That's basically the gist of it. But if you know someone, my father, he was born in 41. He's told me stories what it was like growing up in the 40s and 50s. His brothers and sisters were born, I believe, in the 20s, maybe. He was the youngest of 5. I know some were born in the 30s. So, like, I've heard these stories. So reading this was like almost talking to old family members of mine, and I don't remember where it was located, but my dad's family's from Brooklyn. So understanding what it was in New York City, I forget where this building's supposed to be, or if he's in Brooklyn or if he's in the Bronx or someplace like that. But it was growing up in New York. And these things were like stories I've heard from my family. So for me, I connected with this a lot, but there's just such beauty to it. I've always said this. Will was a master of telling stories and drawing the most beautifully pathetic, ugly-looking people you could imagine. And God, there's a scene in here I remember reading, and I was tearing up on it, and I just wanted to start tearing up again on here. I'm passing it, so you can't really see what's going on, but I want to find a good, like, pathetic, like, his people felt real. And you know what? And like I said, he does some stuff with nudity and sexual situation and language in this book, which I said is not normally my story. But his is done in a way where it's so believable, in the sense where it just works with the story. But when I mean believable, I mean it's just like, I don't know. It's not. I don't know how to describe it, but it's not. Not just in there to be in there. Sometimes I'll read a comic and or even I'll watch a show and they'll put a scene in there, and I'll be like, did that need to be? It could have been suggested. Now I come from suggest, don't show. That's my storytelling type. I would have done it differently than Will would have done. I wouldn't have shown that stuff. But again, not a prude, but it's just a preference. You guys got to think about how you want to tell your stories. But these are things that inspire me, things that I look at. I don't know. I don't really have much more to say on the topic today. I showed you all the books that I liked. I went over some of what I liked about it. Gave you guys some webcomics to check out. The Roundhouse Hooligans comic I gave a review to, so you guys can look that up because I can't find the link. But I think you guys should check out Roundhouse Hooligans. If you are the type that like violence in the sense where you actually see a lot of violence happening, gunshots, knives, whatever it is, a lot of blood. That's if you like to see the sexual situations with the nudity and stuff, that's fine. Enjoy it. It's just like I said, when I read a comic, I want to be transported. I want to be, I don't want to deal with reality. Reality kind of bothers me. when I'm reading comics. I don't mind it in TV shows. I don't mind it in films and things. But in comics, I want to be taken away somewhere else. And I just prefer the less is more, the, suggest, not show. And that's in my comics. It doesn't mean in other medium I don't like that. And for me, Roundhouse Hooligans will work great as a film. It'll work great as a TV series. But for a comic, it's not something I would pick up. But I hope you guys check it out if that's the type of stuff you're into, because the story really seems like it's turning into something that could be really a good story to read. Again, it's about parents who are killed. It goes into the future, and the kids are grown up and they're searching for each other. They've been separated, but not everything is as simple and easy as the world was before the parents died. That's all I want to say about it. Check it out. It's called Roundhouse Hooligans. You'll definitely, if you're into that type of stuff, definitely check it out. You'll really like it. Check out the middle-aged comic, which I posted a link to. Check out the Mythic Creature Trainer, which I posted a link to. The interviews I posted a link to. The one I did with Nerds of the Round, and go follow them and like them on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Go to you check out my interview with Steve Conley of the Middle Age. Check out my recent interview with Renee Fitzner, who's the Mythic Creature Trainer. And tune in on Tuesday night. I'll be announcing that guest real soon at 8:30 p.m. Eastern for my Get in Tune show. And next week, I just need to confirm, but I got to guess we're going to do something very fun next week. I'm looking forward to next Saturday's storytelling show a lot. All right. And with that, guys, thanks for tuning in with me, hanging out. I hope you guys enjoyed today, and I will see you. I'll see you on Tuesday. All right. Bye, guys.